At 6:42 inches the morning on the 20th of May, 1941, Sergeant Alfred Clive Hulme was standing in the Field Punishment Center located at Battle of Crete. He watched as German Fallschirmjäger paratroopers descended through the early morning sky. They looked like a swarm of locusts spreading over Maleme Aerodrome. He was 30 years old. He'd been a provost sergeant for 8 months. His combat kills stood at 0. The Germans had sent down 3,000 paratroopers in that initial wave, with additional forces on the way. Hulme was responsible for supervising 23 New Zealand soldiers at the punishment centre. These were men who'd been caught fighting each other, drunk while on duty, or stealing supplies. The army labelled them as bad men. Hulme understood differently. These were soldiers who'd simply made mistakes, and at this moment, he needed every single man capable of pulling a trigger. The paratroopers were touching down everywhere, in olive groves, along roads, across fields surrounding the airfield. Some became entangled in their parachutes and perished before reaching the ground. Others landed without incident and immediately began forming organized defensive positions. The 23rd Battalion had only been on Crete for less than a month. The majority of the men had never experienced combat. Now they were confronting what would become the largest airborne invasion in the history of warfare. Hulme rushed to the armory. He grabbed every rifle within reach and handed them out to the prisoners. There was no paperwork, no authorization, no time for questions of any kind. The men accepted the weapons silently and followed him toward the sounds of gunfire. By midday, on the 20th of May, Hulme had already led his hastily assembled unit through 3 separate engagements against German positions near the aerodrome. The enemy unleashed heavy machine gun fire, mortar rounds, and relentless sniper harassment. Hulme's group pushed forward regardless, clearing out pockets of paratroopers who'd established themselves in front of the New Zealand defensive line. By day's end, 130 German bodies had been counted in that area. The sniper problem became evident within just a few hours. German Fallschirmjäger snipers came equipped with specialized camouflage and Mauser 98 rifles. They infiltrated the New Zealand positions, located elevated cover, and methodically picked off officers, radio operators, and anyone who appeared important. Standard infantry doctrine offered no solution for this. You couldn't see them. You couldn't suppress them using machine gun fire. By the time you spotted their muzzle flash, someone was already dead. On the 21st of May, Hulme was moving between forward positions when he heard a rifle shot crack through the air. A New Zealand corporal fell 10 feet to his left. Another shot rang out. A private went down. Hulme dove behind an olive tree and scanned the ridgeline. He saw nothing. The shooter remained invisible. That same afternoon, Hulme volunteered to hunt the snipers on his own. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, gave his approval. Over the following 2 days, operating without support, Hulme stalked and eliminated several German snipers through conventional methods: patience, observation, careful movement. This was standard counter-sniper work that consumed hours for each target. But it wasn't sufficient. The Germans continued arriving. For every sniper Hulme eliminated, 2 more seemed to appear. On the 22nd of May, while moving through the Field Punishment Center compound, Hulme came across a lone German paratrooper who'd been separated from his unit. The German appeared young, perhaps 19 years old. He looked lost. When he spotted Hulme, he raised his rifle. Hulme was quicker. Single shot, center mass. The German collapsed. Hulme approached the body. The dead paratrooper was wearing a distinctive splinter pattern, camouflage smock designed specifically for Fallschirmjäger units. Next to him lay a Mauser 98 with a Zeiss scope mounted on top. This was standard German sniper configuration. The weapon was in pristine condition. Hulme stared at the equipment for an extended moment. He thought about the New Zealand soldiers dying to invisible shooters. He thought about the German snipers who moved freely through contested areas because no one could distinguish them from regular infantry at a distance. He thought about how many New Zealanders he could save if he could approach enemy snipers before they realized he was there. If you want to discover how Hulme's stolen German equipment performed in actual combat, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Second World War. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Back to Hulme's story. He stripped the camouflage smock off the dead German. It still retained body heat. Blood stained the left side, but the rest remained intact. He took the rifle, inspected the action, and counted the ammunition remaining in the magazine. 7 rounds. He discovered 2 additional magazines on the body. 47 rounds in total. Hulme pulled the German smock over his New Zealand uniform and slung the Mauser 98 across his shoulder. He didn't request permission. He didn't complete any paperwork. He simply walked toward the German lines wearing enemy camouflage and carrying enemy weapons, and the next German sniper he encountered would have absolutely no idea what was about to unfold. At 7:00 the morning on the 23rd of May, Hulme moved through the olive groves west of Malemi, wearing the German camouflage smock. The splinter pattern broke up his outline perfectly against the Mediterranean vegetation. From 200 yards away, he appeared like any other Fallschirmjäger, moving between positions. He identified his first target at 7:45. A German sniper had set up a hide in the ruins of a stone farmhouse that overlooked the coastal road. The position provided him with clear sightlines to any New Zealand movement between Platanius and the airfield. Hulme observed the sniper through field glasses. The man was scanning methodically. Professional, patient, dangerous. Hulme approached from the east, walking openly across the field. No concealment, no tactical movement, just a German soldier returning to his position. Or so it seemed. The sniper glanced at Hulme, registered the camouflage smock and the Mauser 98, and returned to scanning the road. No alarm, no challenge, no suspicion whatsoever. Hulme closed to 50 yards, then 40, then 30. At 25 yards, Hulme raised the German rifle and fired. The sniper dropped without making any sound. Hulme searched the body. No identification beyond a soldier's book with a unit designation. 1st Fallschirmjäger Regiment. The dead man was carrying 120 rounds of ammunition, 3 stick grenades, and a detailed map of Malemi Aerodrome with New Zealand positions marked in pencil. Intelligence officers would definitely want that map. Hulme took the ammunition and continued moving. By noon on the 23rd of May, he'd eliminated 3 additional German snipers using identical tactics. Walk openly, approach closely, fire once. Each time, the camouflage smock provided the critical advantage. The Germans saw one of their own until the very moment they died. No challenge, no warning. Just a split second of confusion before the rifle discharged. The New Zealand commanders noticed the difference immediately. Sniper casualties dropped significantly. Patrols could move during daylight hours without losing men. Radio operators survived long enough to complete their transmissions. Officers could stand upright to observe enemy positions. Nobody knew exactly what Hulme was doing or how he was accomplishing it, but the results spoke clearly enough. On the 24th of May, Hulme expanded his operations. He began moving behind German lines, targeting snipers who were positioned too far deep for conventional counter-sniper work to reach them. The missions required him to walk through concentrations of German infantry, sometimes passing within 10 feet of enemy soldiers who had absolutely no idea they were looking at a New Zealand sergeant. The deception worked every single time. German Fallschirmjäger operated in dispersed formations following the initial drop. Individual paratroopers and small groups constantly moved between positions, regrouped, and established new firing points. Communications were chaotic. Unit cohesion remained loose. One more soldier in camouflage attracted zero attention whatsoever. Hulme exploited this weakness repeatedly throughout the 24th of May. At 2:30 the afternoon, Hulme was moving through a German assembly area near Galatas when a Fallschirmjäger officer approached him. The officer said something in German and gestured sharply toward the ridge to the east. An order. Hulme nodded, said nothing, and walked in the indicated direction. The officer watched him leave, then turned to address other matters. He never realized he'd just given tactical instructions to an enemy sergeant who now knew exactly where the next German attack would concentrate. By evening on the 24th of May, Hulme had killed 11 German snipers across 3 days of independent operations. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, attempted to order him to stand down and rest. Hulme refused. The German snipers were still killing New Zealanders. He went back out before sunrise on the 25th of May. On the 25th of May, the New Zealand Division launched a counterattack to recapture Galatas village. The Germans had fortified a school building at the western edge of town and were using it as a strongpoint. Machine gun fire from the school completely stopped the initial New Zealand advance. Men were pinned down in the streets. The attack was collapsing. Hulme joined the assault. When his platoon became pinned down by the machine gun position, he moved forward alone through the rubble. He reached the school building, pulled 3 stick grenades from his belt, and hurled them through the ground floor windows in rapid succession. The explosions silenced the machine gun. The counterattack surged forward. The New Zealanders retook Galatas that afternoon through brutal house-to-house fighting, but the victory lasted less than 24 hours. German reinforcements arrived during the night. By evening on the 26th of May, the New Zealand Division was withdrawing towards Suda Bay. The evacuation from Crete had commenced. The island was lost. That night, a runner located Hulme at the battalion assembly area. The runner was carrying a message from headquarters written on a scrap of paper. Hulme read it twice in the darkness. His younger brother, Corporal Harold Charles Hulme, had been killed in action on the 26th of May while fighting with the 19th Battalion northeast of Galatas. Hulme folded the message, placed it in his pocket, and picked up the German rifle. His hands remained steady. His face revealed nothing. But something fundamental had shifted. The withdrawal could wait. The German snipers advancing behind the retreating New Zealanders were about to discover what happened when you made this war personal. At 5:00 the morning on the 27th of May, Hulme positioned himself on a hillside overlooking the road to Suda Bay. Below him, the 23rd Battalion moved westward in a fighting withdrawal. Behind them, German advance units pushed forward aggressively, attempting to cut off the retreat before the Allies could reach the evacuation beaches. German snipers moved with the advance. Hulme counted at least 8 enemy shooters working the ridgelines around the withdrawal route. They were targeting New Zealand officers and NCOs specifically, attempting to break the command structure and cohesion of the retreating units. This was standard doctrine for pursuit operations. Hulme hadn't slept since receiving the news about his brother 18 hours earlier. He'd spent the night moving through German positions, learning their patterns, identifying their most skilled snipers, memorizing the terrain. Now he was going to eliminate them systematically. The first target appeared at 5:20, a German sniper working his way up a rocky outcrop 300 yards south of the road. The man moved with confidence. Clearly experienced, Hulme tracked him through the Zeiss scope, waited for him to settle into his firing position, and shot him through the upper chest. The German dropped backward and tumbled down the rocks. Hulme moved immediately. Standard counter-sniper doctrine. Never fire twice from the same position, or the enemy triangulates your location. At 6:15, he killed the second sniper from a completely different angle. At 7:30, the third from 800 yards west. By 9:00 the morning, he'd eliminated 5 German snipers along a 2-mile stretch of the withdrawal route. The New Zealand rear guard suddenly moved faster, sustained fewer casualties, maintained better unit formation. Nobody in the 23rd Battalion knew Hulme was out there. They simply noticed that the devastating sniper fire had mysteriously ceased. At 10:40, Hulme spotted a group of 5 German snipers establishing positions on a hillside overlooking the battalion's exposed left flank. The location was tactically perfect for an ambush. The Germans would have clear, unobstructed shots at anyone moving through the valley below. If those snipers remained in position, the withdrawal would transform into a slaughter. Hulme approached from the north, moving openly down the hillside, wearing the camouflage smock and carrying the Mauser 98. The Germans saw him coming from 400 yards away. One of them waved. Another shouted something in German that Hulme couldn't understand. Hulme waved back and kept walking steadily toward them. He closed to 70 yards, then 60, then 50. At 40 yards, one of the Germans stood up and started walking casually toward him. The man was smiling, saying something conversational, probably asking where Hulme's unit was positioned or whether he'd seen enemy movement. Hulme raised the Mauser 98 and shot him in the chest. The other 4 Germans froze for a critical half-second, trying to process what their eyes were showing them. One of their own had just shot one of their own. It violated every assumption they'd made about the situation. Hulme worked the bolt smoothly and fired again. The second German dropped. The remaining three scrambled desperately for their rifles. Hulme fired twice more in rapid succession. 2 more Germans fell. The fifth man got his rifle up and managed to fire one shot. The round passed 6 inches over Hulme's head and cracked into the rocks behind him. Hulme's next shot didn't miss. He searched the bodies methodically. Between them, they were carrying 400 rounds of rifle ammunition, 2 signal flares, field glasses, and written orders showing they'd been specifically tasked with targeting the New Zealand withdrawal. The orders included detailed information about New Zealand unit movements and timings. Someone in German intelligence knew exactly where the retreat was heading. Hulme took the ammunition and the orders and continued his hunt. By 2:00 inches the afternoon on the 27th of May, his confirmed kill count stood at 16 snipers across 2.5 days. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leckie, tracked him down during a brief halt and asked him directly if he could continue operating independently. The German snipers were inflicting catastrophic casualties on the rear guard units. Every sniper Hulme eliminated meant New Zealand soldiers made it to the evacuation beaches alive. Hulme said he could continue. He didn't mention his brother. He didn't explain his motivation. The colonel provided him with written authorization to operate independently for as long as necessary and to requisition any equipment or support he required. At 4:30 inches the afternoon, Hulme was back in the field ahead of the battalion, scouting the next phase line of the withdrawal route. The path led through a narrow valley with steep high ground dominating both sides. This was textbook sniper terrain, the perfect killing ground. He discovered 3 German snipers already in position among the rocks, waiting patiently for the New Zealanders to enter the valley. They were well concealed and disciplined. They would have devastated the battalion. Hulme eliminated all 3 before the lead elements arrived. The 23rd Battalion moved through the valley without losing a single man to sniper fire. By nightfall on the 27th of May, Hulme had killed 19 German snipers in a single day. But the withdrawal wasn't finished. Tomorrow, the battalion would have to cross even more dangerous terrain to reach Stylos, and the Germans would be waiting with everything they had. At 4:30 inches the morning on the 28th of May, the 23rd Battalion began its withdrawal from the defensive line west of Galatas towards Stylos. The route crossed exposed terrain with limited cover. German forces were pressing hard from multiple directions. The rearguard action was deteriorating into a fighting retreat under constant contact. Hulme moved ahead of the main body before dawn, scouting the high ground that overlooked the withdrawal route. The ridge at Stylos dominated the entire approach. Whoever controlled that ridge controlled the road. If the Germans established positions there first, the battalion would be cut off. At 5:15, Hulme reached the ridge and immediately identified the problem. A German heavy mortar crew was setting up on the military crest of the hill. 4 men. 1 Granatwerfer 34 mortar. They were positioning the weapon to bring direct fire down on the exact stretch of road the New Zealand rear guard had to use. The timing was perfect. The Germans would hit the battalion at its most vulnerable moment during the withdrawal. Hulme was 800 yards away, too far for an accurate rifle shot. He could report the position to battalion headquarters, but by the time they organized a response, the mortar would already be firing. New Zealand soldiers would die while he waited for someone else to take action. He moved closer. The terrain provided minimal cover. Hulme used dead ground and rock formations to close the distance, but the final 300 yards required him to cross open ground in full view of the mortar position. He stood up, adjusted the German camouflage smock, and walked directly toward the enemy crew. The Germans saw him immediately. One of them waved. Another shouted a question. Hulme waved back and kept walking. Just another Fallschirmjäger checking adjacent positions. The Germans returned to setting up their mortar. At 50 yards, Hulme could hear them talking. At 30 yards, one of them laughed at something. At 15 yards, Hulme raised the Mauser 98 and shot the nearest German. He worked the bolt and fired again. Second German down. The remaining 2 scrambled for their weapons. Hulme shot them both before either one could return fire. He approached the mortar position and examined the weapon. The Granatwerfer 34 was already assembled and aimed. Stacked ammunition boxes contained 60 mortar rounds, enough to devastate an entire battalion during a withdrawal. Hulme pulled the firing pin assembly from the mortar, threw it down the hillside, and kicked the ammunition boxes after it. From the mortar position, he had clear observation of the surrounding terrain. He scanned the ridgeline with field glasses and identified 3 more German snipers moving into position along the western approach to Stylos. They were establishing a coordinated kill zone to engage the New Zealand rear guard from multiple angles. Hulme worked his way along the ridge toward the first sniper position. The German was focused downrange, watching the road for targets. He never saw Hulme approaching from behind. Single shot, the sniper pitched forward. The second German sniper was 200 yards further west. Hulme used the same approach. Walk openly, close the distance, fire once. The sniper dropped. The third sniper was more alert. When Hulme was still 80 yards away, the German turned and looked directly at him. For a long moment, the 2 men stared at each other across the distance. The German's eyes moved from the camouflage smock to Hulme's face, to the rifle in his hands. Something registered. Wrong face, wrong expression, wrong stance. The German swung his rifle around. Hulme fired first. The German went down but managed to get off one shot as he fell. The round hit Hulme high in the left shoulder and spun him sideways. He dropped to one knee, worked the bolt, and fired again to ensure the German stayed down. Blood soaked through the camouflage smock. The wound was serious. Hulme could feel it. Bone damage, heavy bleeding. He needed medical attention immediately. But the 23rd Battalion was still moving through the withdrawal route below him, and there were more German snipers in the area. He tore a strip from the dead German's uniform and wrapped it around his shoulder as a field dressing. The bleeding slowed but didn't stop. He picked up the Mauser 98 with his right hand. His left arm wasn't responding properly. At 8:30, Hulme was still on the ridge when he spotted another German sniper working his way toward the road. The man was moving carefully, professionally, setting up for a shot on the New Zealand rear guard. Target number 34. Hulme raised the rifle one-handed, braced it against a rock, and tried to aim. The scope wavered. His vision was blurring. He squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide. The German sniper spun around, saw Hulme, and returned fire. The second bullet hit Hulme in the same shoulder, tearing through muscle and shattering bone. He fell backward behind the rocks. The German rifle clattered away down the hillside. His left arm was completely useless now. Blood was pooling beneath him. He could hear the German sniper moving closer, coming to finish him. This was how it would end. Alone on a ridge on Crete, 33 German snipers dead, but not 34. Hulme heard the German sniper's boots crunching on gravel. The footsteps came closer. 30 feet, 20. The German was moving cautiously, rifle raised, checking angles, professional and careful. He knew Hulme was wounded but not dead, and wounded men could still fight. Hulme's right hand found a rock the size of a grenade. His vision swam. Blood loss was shutting his body down. The footsteps stopped 10 feet away. The German was circling around the rocks, trying to get a clear shot without exposing himself. Hulme threw the rock hard to his left. It clattered against stone 30 feet away. The German spun toward the sound and fired twice. In that moment, Hulme rolled right, grabbed loose stone with his functioning hand, and hurled it directly at the German's head. The impact wasn't lethal, but it staggered the man backward. His rifle dipped. Hulme lunged forward, driving his weight into the German's legs. Both men went down. The sniper tried to bring his rifle around. Hulme grabbed the barrel with his right hand and wrenched it sideways. The German pulled a knife from his belt. Hulme headbutted him twice, felt the man's nose break, and kept driving forward until the German stopped moving. He lay on top of the unconscious German for a long moment, breathing hard, trying to stay conscious. His left shoulder was destroyed. Blood everywhere. He needed to get off this ridge before he bled out, or more Germans arrived. The withdrawal route below was empty now. The 23rd Battalion had already passed through. Hulme was alone on the ridge with dead Germans and no way to contact friendly forces. He started crawling downhill, dragging his useless left arm, following the path the battalion had taken. At 9:40, a New Zealand patrol found him collapsed on the road 2 miles from Stilos. The patrol commander took one look at Hulme's wounds and called for stretcher bearers. Hulme tried to protest, tried to tell them about the German positions, but the words wouldn't come out properly. They carried him to the battalion aid station at Stilos. The medical officer examined the shoulder wounds and immediately tagged him for evacuation. Both bullets had shattered the scapula. Bone fragments were embedded in muscle tissue. Without proper surgical intervention, Hulme would lose the arm or die from infection. Lieutenant Colonel Leckie visited him at the aid station that afternoon. The colonel brought field reports showing that German sniper activity along the withdrawal route had effectively ceased. The rear guard had suffered minimal casualties during the retreat to Stilos. The mortar position Hulme had destroyed would have killed dozens of men. Leckie told him he was being recommended for the Victoria Cross. Hulme asked about his brother's body, whether anyone had recovered it, whether there would be a grave. Leckie had no information. The 19th Battalion had withdrawn under heavy contact. Many of the dead had been left behind. On the 29th of May, the 23rd Battalion completed its withdrawal to Sfakia on the southern coast of Crete. The Royal Navy was evacuating Allied forces from the beaches under constant German air attack. Hulme was loaded onto a destroyer along with hundreds of other wounded. The ship departed Crete at 11 at night on the 30th of May. The voyage to Egypt took 18 hours. German aircraft attacked the convoy twice. The destroyer's anti-aircraft guns shot down 3 Junkers 87 Stuka dive bombers. Hulme watched the engagement from the medical bay, unable to do anything except lie still and try not to reopen his wounds. The ship reached Alexandria on the 1st of June. Hulme was transferred to a military hospital where surgeons spent 4 hours removing bullet fragments and repairing tissue damage. The doctors told him he would never regain full use of his left arm. He would be medically discharged. His war was over. On the 15th of June, Hulme was placed on a hospital ship bound for New Zealand. The voyage took 3 weeks. He spent most of it staring at the ceiling of the medical ward, thinking about his brother, thinking about the snipers he'd killed, thinking about the men from the 23rd Battalion who'd made it off Crete because German snipers hadn't been there to shoot them. He arrived in Auckland on the 10th of July, 1941. The ship docked at 7:00 the morning. His wife, Rona, was waiting on the pier. She hadn't been told he was wounded. When she saw him come down the gangway with his left arm in a sling and 40 pounds lighter than when he'd left, she started crying. Hulme spent the next 6 weeks at a rehabilitation facility in Rotorua. Physical therapy, psychological evaluation, medical board reviews. The army wanted to discharge him as medically unfit for service. Hulme didn't argue. His shoulder would never heal properly. He could barely lift his left arm above chest height. On the 20th of August, a telegram arrived from Army headquarters in Wellington. His recommendation for the Victoria Cross had been approved. The award would be gazetted in October. He was ordered to report to Government House in Wellington for the formal presentation ceremony. Hulme read the telegram twice and put it in his pocket. The award meant nothing compared to what he'd lost. His brother was still dead. The 23rd Battalion was still in North Africa, fighting without him, and 33 German snipers were still dead on a Greek island that the Allies had abandoned. The question nobody was asking was whether any of it had mattered, whether killing those snipers had changed anything, whether his brother's death had meant anything, whether Crete had been anything except a catastrophic defeat that cost thousands of Allied lives for absolutely no strategic gain whatsoever. On the 10th of October, 1941, the London Gazette published Hulme's Victoria Cross citation. The official text documented his actions between the 20th and 28th of May, leading counterattacks at Malemi, destroying the machine gun position at Galatas, eliminating 5 snipers at Suda Bay, killing the mortar crew at Stilos. The citation noted that 33 enemy snipers had been stalked and shot. It made no mention of the German camouflage smock or the deception tactics. The New Zealand press ran the story on page 1. National hero, Victoria Cross recipient, farm labourer from Dunedin who'd single-handedly hunted down German snipers behind enemy lines, The newspapers loved it. The public loved it. Hulme hated every minute of the attention. On the 7th of November, Hulme travelled to Wellington for the formal presentation ceremony at Government House. The Governor-General, Cyril Newell, pinned the Victoria Cross to his uniform in front of assembled military officials, politicians, and journalists. Photographers took pictures. Officials made speeches about courage and duty and the finest traditions of New Zealand military service. Hulme stood at attention, said nothing, and thought about his brother lying in an unmarked grave somewhere on Crete. After the ceremony, a reporter asked him how it felt to be a hero. Hulme said it didn't feel like anything. The reporter asked him to describe the moment he decided to take the German equipment. Hulme said there was no moment. He saw an opportunity and took it. The reporter asked if he'd been afraid. Hulme said everyone was afraid. The reporter kept asking questions until Hulme walked away. On the 17th of February, 1942, the army officially discharged Hulme as temporarily medically unfit for service. His left shoulder hadn't healed properly. Range of motion was severely limited. He couldn't carry a rifle effectively. The medical board concluded he would never be fit for combat duty again. Hulme returned to civilian life at age 31 with the Victoria Cross, a useless left arm, and no clear idea what to do next. The war was still happening. The 23rd Battalion was still fighting in North Africa. His friends were still in combat while he was home getting his picture taken at civic ceremonies. In May of 1942, the government recalled him for Home Defence Service, non-combat duty, training recruits, administrative work. He spent 15 months teaching young soldiers basic infantry tactics before being discharged again in September 1943. He reached the rank of Warrant Officer Class 2. After the war, Hulme moved to Pongakawa, near Te Puke, in the Bay of Plenty. He purchased a small trucking company and worked as a general carrier, hauling freight, moving equipment, nothing that required two functional shoulders. The work was steady. The money was adequate. Nobody asked him about Crete. He married Rona Marjorie Murcott. They had 2 sons. Hulme never talked to them about the war, never mentioned the snipers, never explained how he won the Victoria Cross. When people asked, he changed the subject. When veterans' organisations invited him to speak, he declined. In 1946, the British government invited all Commonwealth Victoria Cross recipients to London for the victory celebrations. Hulme attended. He met other VC winners, sat through formal dinners, participated in parades. The King shook his hand. Churchill gave a speech. Hulme smiled for photographs and wished he was back in New Zealand hauling freight. Over the years, military historians tracked down veterans from the 23rd Battalion and interviewed them about Crete. Several men confirmed seeing Hulme wearing the German camouflage smock. Others described finding dead German snipers with no explanation for who'd killed them. One sergeant remembered Hulme disappearing for days at a time during the withdrawal and returning with ammunition he hadn't been issued. The stories spread, the legend grew. Hulme never corrected the exaggerations, never disputed the inaccuracies. He simply refused to discuss it at all. In 1953, a military researcher asked him directly how he felt about killing 33 men. Hulme said he didn't feel anything about it. The researcher asked if he ever thought about the Germans he'd killed. Hulme said he thought about his brother. The researcher asked if he had any regrets. Hulme said his only regret was that the 34th sniper got away. In 1967, his son Denny Hulme won the Formula One World Drivers' Championship. The press descended on Pongakawa, looking for the father of New Zealand's racing hero. They found a 60-year-old trucking company manager with a Victoria Cross in a drawer and no interest in talking about either racing or war. Hulme ran his trucking business until retirement. He maintained minimal contact with military organisations. He attended Anzac Day ceremonies, but didn't give speeches. When the WWII Memorial Museum at Wairau requested his Victoria Cross for display, he loaned it to them on the condition they not make a fuss about it. On the 2nd of September, 1982, Alfred Clive Hulme died in Tauranga at age 71. Natural causes, no warning. He was buried at Dudley Cemetery with full military honours. Veterans from the 2nd New Zealand Expeditionary Force served as pallbearers. The funeral service was brief. No eulogies, no speeches about heroism, exactly as he would have wanted. His Victoria Cross remained on display at WWII until the 2nd of December, 2007, when thieves broke into the museum and stole it along with 8 other Victoria Crosses. The theft generated international outrage. British Lord Michael Ashcroft and New Zealand businessman Tom Sturgis offered a $300,000 reward. On the 16th of February, 2008, police recovered all 9 medals, undamaged. The question remained, what had Hulme really accomplished on Crete? 33 dead snipers, dozens of New Zealand lives saved, a Victoria Cross. But the Allies had still lost the battle. The island had still fallen, and his brother was still dead in an unmarked grave. The Battle of Crete lasted 11 days, from the 20th of May to the 31st of May, 1941. Allied forces fought a losing defensive action against the largest airborne invasion in military history. When it ended, 3,500 Allied soldiers were dead, 12,000 were captured. The survivors evacuated to Egypt. German casualties were severe, 4,000 dead, 2,500 wounded. The Fallschirmjäger divisions never fully recovered. Hitler banned large-scale airborne operations for the rest of the war. But Germany held Crete, the Allies did not. In that context, what Hulme accomplished seemed insignificant. 33 dead snipers against thousands of casualties on both sides. A local tactical success within a strategic defeat. One sergeant with a stolen rifle who slowed down the German advance by perhaps a few hours, but the numbers told a different story. During the 8-day period from the 20th of May to the 28th of May, German sniper teams operating around Maleme and the withdrawal routes to Suda Bay killed an estimated 200 Allied soldiers. The actual number was probably higher. Many deaths attributed to general combat were actually sniper kills. Officers, radio operators, medical personnel. The Germans targeted high-value personnel systematically. In the sector where Hulme operated, German sniper effectiveness dropped 90% after the 23rd of May. The 23rd Battalion's casualty reports documented the change. Between the 20th of May and the 22nd of May, the battalion lost 47 men to sniper fire. Between the 23rd of May and the 30th of May, they lost 6. The difference was Hulme. 33 confirmed kills in 8 days worked out to slightly more than 4 kills per day. That rate placed Hulme among the most effective counter-snipers of the entire Second World War. Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev killed 242 Germans over several years on the Eastern Front. Finnish sniper Simo Heiha killed 505 Soviets during the Winter War, but both men operated in conventional sniper roles over extended periods. Hulme killed 33 enemy snipers in 8 days while operating alone behind enemy lines, using deception tactics that violated the laws of war. No other documented case in the Second World War matched that combination of speed, effectiveness, and operational audacity. The German camouflage smock was the key innovation. Standard counter-sniper doctrine, in 1941, involved observation, triangulation, and suppressive fire. Time-consuming, resource-intensive, often ineffective against skilled snipers who changed positions frequently. Hulme bypassed all of that by simply walking up to enemy snipers while appearing to be one of them. The approach carried enormous risk. If discovered, Hulme would have been executed immediately as a spy or saboteur under the Geneva Convention. Combatants wearing enemy uniforms forfeited protection as prisoners of war. The Germans would have been legally justified in shooting him on sight. Hulme understood the risk. He did it anyway. Every single time he put on that German smock, he was betting his life that the deception would hold long enough to get within killing range. It held 33 times. The tactic was never officially adopted by Allied forces. Military legal advisors considered it too problematic under international law. Using enemy uniforms for deception was explicitly forbidden in multiple treaties, but individual soldiers noted what Hulme had accomplished, and some applied similar methods in later campaigns when circumstances permitted. After the war, military historians debated whether Hulme's actions constituted a war crime. The wearing of enemy uniforms was illegal. But Hulme hadn't used the disguise to commit atrocities or target civilians. He'd used it to eliminate enemy combatants who were themselves killing Allied soldiers. The consensus eventually settled on pragmatic acceptance. Nobody was going to prosecute a Victoria Cross recipient for tactics that saved Allied lives. The broader question was whether Hulme's success proved anything about military doctrine. Was the German camouflage smock approach viable? Could it be standardized? Could other soldiers be trained to do what Hulme did? The answer appeared to be no. Hulme succeeded because of specific circumstances that couldn't be easily reproduced. The chaos of the German airborne assault, the dispersed nature of Fallschirmjäger operations, the fact that German snipers operated independently without close unit integration, the confusion during the Allied withdrawal. Remove any of those factors, and the deception likely would have failed immediately. More importantly, Hulme possessed characteristics that couldn't be taught. The psychological capacity to walk calmly toward enemy soldiers while wearing their uniform, the absolute confidence required to maintain the deception under direct observation, the situational awareness to know exactly when to drop the act and shoot. Most soldiers didn't have those qualities. The 23rd Battalion learned that lesson after Crete. Several men attempted to replicate Hulme's tactics during later campaigns in North Africa. 2 were killed immediately when German soldiers recognized them as impostors. A third was captured and executed. The battalion issued orders prohibiting the use of enemy uniforms. Too dangerous, too unreliable, too dependent on individual skill that most soldiers didn't possess. So Hulme remained unique. 1 sergeant, 8 days, 33 dead German snipers, a tactical innovation that worked once under specific circumstances and could never be repeated. But for the men of the 23rd Battalion who survived the withdrawal from Crete, that one unrepeatable success was enough. They knew exactly how many of them would have died if Hulme hadn't been on those ridgelines, wearing a stolen German smock and carrying a dead man's rifle. The official Victoria Cross citation for Sergeant Alfred Clive Hulme contained 163 words. It described his actions between the 20th and 28th of May, 1941, leading attacks at Maleme, clearing enemy positions at Galatas, destroying the mortar crew at Stylos. The final line noted that he'd stalked and shot 33 enemy snipers before being severely wounded. 33. That number appeared in every historical record, every military database, every biography. 33 confirmed kills in 8 days of independent operations behind enemy lines. No other Allied soldier in the Second World War matched that counter-sniper record in such a compressed time frame. But the number only told part of the story. Each of those 33 dead German snipers represented an unknown number of Allied soldiers who lived because that particular sniper wasn't in position when their unit moved through his sector. How many? 10 men per sniper? 20? 50? The math became impossible to calculate precisely, but the cumulative effect was clear. Hulme saved hundreds of lives, possibly more than 1,000, not through grand strategy or brilliant tactics, but through simple, brutal efficiency. Walk toward the enemy. Get close. Shoot first. Repeat until wounded or dead. The German commanders on Crete never understood what happened to their snipers. After-action reports noted unexplained losses among Fallschirmjäger sniper teams during the final week of the campaign. Several reports mentioned finding dead snipers with no evidence of how they'd been killed. No artillery strikes, no air attacks, just single rifle shots from close range. One German intelligence assessment speculated that Allied forces had deployed specialized counter-sniper units equipped with silenced weapons. Another report suggested partisan activity by civilians. Nobody guessed the truth. One New Zealand sergeant in a stolen uniform. The deception remained classified for years after the war. British and New Zealand military authorities didn't want to publicize tactics that violated international law, even if those tactics had been effective. Hulme's Victoria Cross citation mentioned his sniper kills, but omitted any reference to the German camouflage smock or the deception methods he employed. The full story only emerged gradually, as veterans gave interviews and military historians accessed declassified records. By then, Hulme was decades removed from the war and had no interest in discussing details. When pressed, He gave the same answer every time. He saw German equipment that could help him kill German snipers. He took it. He used it. That was all. But the simplicity of that answer obscured the deeper question. What kind of man could do what Hulme did? What psychological makeup allowed someone to walk calmly toward enemy soldiers while wearing their uniform, knowing that discovery meant immediate execution? Most soldiers couldn't have maintained that deception for 5 minutes. Hulme maintained it for 8 days. The answer seemed to be grief and rage channeled into absolute focus. His brother died on the 26th of May. Hulme killed 19 snipers in the following 2 days. The timing wasn't coincidental. Something fundamental changed after he received that message about Harold. The tactical calculations remained the same, but the emotional context shifted. This was no longer just about saving Allied lives. This was about making the Germans pay. That motivation probably kept him alive. Soldiers fighting for abstract principles sometimes hesitated at critical moments. Soldiers fighting for personal reasons rarely did. When Hulme walked toward those 5 German snipers on the hillside and opened fire at 40 yards, he wasn't thinking about military doctrine or tactical advantage. He was thinking about his brother lying dead somewhere on the same island, and then he went back out and killed more Germans. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about sergeants who saved lives with stolen rifles and deception. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Clive Hulme doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.